As in a while, as a lot of y'all might know, I'm not on tour right now doing audits. We are actually building a large retreat in the middle of the desert for nomads and displaced Americans to have a place to patch their bones, called Sandstones. So I've been dedicating a lot of my time and effort into building the infrastructure of Sandstones and getting it ready and compliant to serve the mission of housing people, or giving people a safe place to rest when they're living out of their cars, vans, RVs, etc. That being said, that brings us to today's case. This is a new case, and this case is going to involve several actors. This case involves the county of Clermont in Ohio, so it's Clermont County, Ohio. I hope I can hear, everybody can hear me. Can somebody go and see if they can hear me on the Homeless Audits channel? Because I have this mic, this great Hollyland mic, but I haven't tested it with YouTube Live. I assume it works. But I'll keep talking in case it does work while my wife goes and checks and makes sure it does. This case is State versus Diane Pettit. A little background. In Amelia, Ohio, there's a road called State Route 125, and there's an intersection of Amelia Olive Branch. Amelia Olive Branch. Make sure you can hear me, because I don't want to get into this topic and then no one can hear me. Sounds like you can hear me now? All right, cool. So she just checked to verify she can hear me. All right, so Diane Pettit, she lives in an RV. She lives with her two sons in the RV, and so they're semi-homeless. I don't know how you consider that to be. She has an RV, it's paid for. She's retired. She's 70 years old, and she's trying to find places to park. And Cincinnati, Ohio is a very difficult place to find someone who's living out of an RV to find a place to park. But she found a place on the corner of Amelia Olive Branch and 125 by a store called Poochie's Place. It's a restaurant owned by Mary Ellen Johnson. So Poochie's Place has a private lot, and they can regulate traffic in and out all they want. Beside or adjacent to Poochie's Place is CTC, or Clermont Transportation Connection, which is kind of like their BART. If you're in San Francisco, you know BART. If you're in Atlanta, you know MARTA. So it's a public transit system. It's funded by taxpayers as part of the government. It's a public lot. It's called CTC. On the CTC sign, entering the lot, it says commuter vehicles only and no overnight parking. Two very specific things. And then it gives two ordinances that are subject to the civil things about towing. And then so it also says you'll be towed by Mike's Towing if you happen to violate these administrative rules of the commuter lot there at CTC at the corner of Amelia Olive Branch and 125 in Amelia, Ohio. Diane is parked there in her RV. It's daytime hours. It's January 22nd, 2026. On that day, two officers stopped by. Officer Haught, it's H-A-U-G-H-T, and Officer Weitzel. She used to be a detective. She's been demoted to the street for some reason. We haven't figured that out yet. But Weitzel and her, they get a call from a lady named Shonda. Shonda, I think it's Maffery. She's the operations manager of CTC. So she calls in. Apparently, she gets a call from a guy in a truck who is doing lot inspections. And he sees the RV parked there. He believes it to be occupied. He calls into his boss, Shonda, tells her there's his RV in a parking lot of the CTC lot. Shonda calls 911 or dispatch and tells them there's a suspicious vehicle in the CTC lot. It's an RV, possibly occupied, and she doesn't know how long it's been there. That's the report, suspicious vehicle. And that's the long and short. Report goes on to say that Shonda has left the scene. Shonda was never there, but she had left the scene and she could be available via internal communications. So, that being said, these two officers show up and they tell Diane she can't be parked in the lot. This is about noon. And she said she can't be parked in the lot. She had to leave. So she left. And the notation that Weitzel puts down in the CAD, the CAD log, is that he advised her of a trespass. Although he did not advise her of a trespass, he just told her to leave. A public lot, by the way. So then moving forward, on February 15th, there's another interaction. This interaction is an investigative report by Officer Stevens. These are both Pierce Township, by the way. Pierce Township is in Clermont County. These are Pierce Township officers. So Stevens says in his report that he knows Diane is trespassed from both Pucci's place as well as the CTC lot. So he stops to cite her for trespassing. And that's what's probable cause. That's his RAS, is that he knows that she's been trespassed. So he proceeds to trespass her for citing her for trespassing, and then sends her on her way. And she's so frazzled, she drives away with the slide of her RV still out, putting everybody in danger. And she's being, demanded to leave under threat of arrest, and she's being cited for trespassing. She's 70 years old and retired. So she frazzledly pulled out, and anyways, this comes to my table now, because she's like, I don't know what I did wrong. I was parked in a public parking lot. It was daytime hours. I have no idea what I did wrong, so I started investigating. Some of the things that we did was, first off, she got assigned a public pretender. The guy is obviously inept, and we had filed pro se a motion to dismiss, a motion for speedy trial to preserve those rights, and the dismissal was based on lack of mens rea. The public pretender comes in on day one and tells the judge he doesn't want those heard. He's waiting for discovery. So that's March 3rd was the first hearing on this case. And if you want to look it up, it's case number 2026 CRB as in boy 00422 in Clermont County. So moving forward, he basically bypasses all her pro se motions once he's appointed to her, and then March 31st comes along. He asks for a continuance so he can get discovery. March 31st is the continuous date, and that's the date he's supposed to get discovery, apparently, or come prepared. He comes back in and he asks for another continuance. On this date, she actually had her pre-trial motions packet done. I helped her get that accomplished. It has, a bill of particulars, motion for bill of particulars, because they're saying Pucci's place she was trespassed from, as well as CTC. There's a lot of various things that she doesn't even know what she's defending against, so she needs a bill of particulars. This also had a removal of counsel, because counsel acted against her will on March 3rd, and a new speedy trial motion. Her counsel tells her, I'm not filing any of these. I'm not going to do it. So at that point in time, he took off with the motion to dismiss him as counsel and didn't even leave that with her to file. So after the court date was over, I told her, I said, file the motions pro se, and then dismiss him as counsel. She said, I don't have that motion. So I had to send her another one. So he deprived her of that motion. So now we know he's kind of working for the wrong side of the law as a public pretender. His name is Robert Stearns, by the way. If you might want to know who he is Robert Stearns, Stearns. He's at Clermont County, Ohio, Batavia, Ohio. So Robert Stearns then. So I do a public records request with CTC to ask them about any letter of agency that was given to Pierce Township, or, what authority did Pierce Township have to even cite somebody for trespassing, or to trespass somebody for that matter on January 22nd? What authority existed? None existed. The public records request came back from their lawyer, an outside counsel by the name of Isaac Wiles, believe it is. But regardless, they came back and said there is no letter of agency. They had no authority to trespass. Nobody from their agency asked for her to be trespassed. This officer just acted completely on his own based on the report he saw from January 22nd. Now, mind you, in Clermont County, in a lot of places in the country, they use what's called a Sundance system, Sundance CAD system. In the Sundance system, there's several things you'll see on a CAD report. You'll see a P number, PNUM, and you'll see a file number, and you'll see MVI number, which is it's an identification number. So anyways, the important one here is the 0, saying there's no records under the F number in hers, because a file number would contain any trespass warning. So if you're giving a trespass warning from an interaction, they're going to enter that in under your name, and it's going to be a file number, and so she will show 1 or however many files were entered under your name from that particular incident. That was 0. So Officer Stevens had no reason to believe she was trespassed, other than a quick snippet that said that Weitzel advised Diane trespass. Never happened. But we don't really know if it never happens, because the body-worn cameras are being withheld. So public records request I put in for body-worn cameras was forwarded to the prosecutor, who doesn't want to give it to me while there's an open case. which are obviously records requests and criminal cases are two very different rules. Have nothing to do with me. I get to do a public records request just like she can do a demand for discovery. They shouldn't be combined. But Pierce Township is covering up because they're fucked. I spoke with Lieutenant Berkey, who is the supervising officer who signed off on the January 22nd CAD report for Officer Hott and Weitzel. And he says that CTC does have a trespass on file with them, which is an obvious lie because I told you public records request, the legal notice from Isaac Wiles said, no, that's not true. So he just lies to cover up. And then he goes on to I tried to make a complaint for, violations of the 4th Amendment, 14th Amendment, things like that on behalf of Diane Pettit. And he won't take the complaint because it's anonymous. He says that I have to give him my information to file a complaint. So I filed that with BCI and the report on that and the Ohio AG and move forward. Now we're looking at, we filed the 8 motions, including the bill of particulars and motion for speedy trial again and a Feretta hearing motion for pro se hearing. These are motions that if you are being accused of something you didn't do and you want to go pro se, these are the type of motions you want to file. If you don't understand your charges, then the bill of particulars is going to tell you exactly what they're charging you of and why they're charging you for that. Make sure you understand your motions well. But her pretrial motions were filed on April 1st. And then they were sent via email to the prosecutor April 7th because the prosecutor's window continues to be closed. Remember how I told you she lived in an RV? She doesn't have any money and she can't drive to and from the prosecutor's office and the clerk of courts all the time to file all these motions that she needs to file because of her ineffective counsel that they appointed her and was working against her. So this is the case that we're advocating right now. We're going to have it dismissed. It's pretty simple case where there's lies directly on the reports that create a lack of mens rea. I mean, there's no criminal intent. And so it'll be dismissed. As soon as it's dismissed, what we're looking at here is what's called a Monell claim. Monell claim is when it's not an officer doing something wrong. What it is when there's a systemic custom or practice of a county or a agency or government officials doing something wrong at that capacity. Not because it's qualified immunity. There's no qualified immunity in Monell claims. It means that this is a systemic issue. So when things happen over and over again, if they're going into parking lots and they're telling people to leave in their private parking lots and they don't have letters of agency, and then they're maliciously prosecuting people on false CAD reports, and then the public defenders are falsely or not representing their clients well enough to even defend against trespasses. They're acting on lack of trespasses. All these various things, and you have to notify people. So I talked to Chief Brocksterman, Paul Brocksterman. He came out of Cincinnati Police Department. Paul Brocksterman has a history. Brocksterman has a history of corruption. I mean, he was involved with Jeff. He was a sergeant at the police department, and there was a spoliation of evidence accusations there, and several other things. There was. Regardless, he has a history of scandals. You can look at Paul Brocksterman, Cincinnati Police Department, and see all the scandals if you want to. But that's the chief, and I talked to him, and he's basically covering for him too. Although they see that there's a fabricated story here that had her charged with, she's 70 years old, indigent, lives in an RV. What's their purpose? Well, we know their purpose. We know they're fashion policing. We know that they think it's blight. They don't appreciate people who live in their RVs or panhandle or do things that homeless people do. And they want to regulate homelessness out of society, and that's not legal. So they can't say that. So they do things. They say that you broke other laws that you haven't broke. They do this song and dance. Fortunately, Diane Pettit has a good advocate here. And we will beat the case, and we will show you the update of the Monell claim as it comes through. The Monell claim I'm working on right now might include CTC. They apparently have no policies and procedures on what to do when there is a police interaction. I don't believe that, but that's what they're saying because it keeps me from proving that Shonda acted outside of her official capacity and did things on her own. And so they're trying to cover up for her employee, their operations manager. and so she doesn't get attached to the lawsuit herself. But regardless, I'll keep you updated on this case. It's case number 2026 CRB 00422 out of Clermont County, Ohio. Diane Pettit is the defendant. Right now, it's State versus Diane Pettit. But just like you saw in the Kirby versus Hillsborough County case that we finished in Tampa, if you look back in the videos, you can see a lot of data on the Kirby versus Hillsborough County case. He just got his check. It took forever to cut that check. That was a 90. I'm not going to say how much the settlement was because I don't know if I'm supposed to. But let's say it was a significant settlement for the violations of Ryan Kirby's 4th and 14th Amendment rights. That was handled by Ray Tassif of Florida Justice Institute. Thank y'all so much, Florida Justice Institute, for taking that case. You did a wonderful job. I think it took a little too long. And the settlement, the amount that Ryan got was probably not as much as I would have pushed for, considering the circumstances. But, you know, after a little over a year of battling with Tampa and Hillsborough County, Ryan was exhausted, to say the least. And so he took a settlement a little bit lower than I would have suggested, a lot of bit lower than I would have suggested, but he got a settlement and he won the case. So that being said, Diane Pettit is going to be the next one. Pay attention to this case as we move forward, and I'll give you updates as things develop. Love you all so much. This is Homeless Audits. Peace out.